talking all aspects of the Middle East with the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, and then discussing Black solidarity for Israel and the role that music plays in portraying Israel's story, and more with Joshua Washington from the Stand With Us studios in Jerusalem and on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts and across social media. I'm Michael Dixon, and from Stand With Us TV, this is Special Briefing. Our guest is a key figure in advancing regional cooperation and innovation through the Abraham Accords. She's the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem and the co-founder of the UAE Israel Business Council. Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, thanks for joining us.
Michael, always great being with you.
Great to have you back with us, and this time in our studio.
It's beautiful.
Let's talk, first of all, about what life has been like since October the 7th until now.
In general, I don't know one person, at least in this country, and even Jews around the world, that haven't changed since October 7th. I think the most stark thing for me is a loss of innocence. I'm a very optimistic person, you know me, and I'm always pressing for regional normalization, for peace and prosperity, for empowerment and prosperity of Arab populations in Israel. That's been my life's work, and that was my work in City Hall, trying to bring in the minorities into the prosperity of the startup nation, and that was what I was doing. After October 7th, all that froze. All that bridge building that we'd all been so invested in completely froze. But also, I never, ever, ever thought in my worst nightmares that something like this would happen. In fact, the week before October 7th was my 50th birthday, and I was asked by the Jerusalem Post to write an article on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, which is when I was born. And I wrote this incredible article with these amazing pictures of regional integration, saying that what happened on Yom Kippur would never happen again. Week later, and we have the worst massacre in our history here in the modern state of Israel. And so a real loss of innocence. It took, we're all traumatized. We're not even post-trauma because we're still in the trauma. We're still in the war. Heartbreak in every single way. And at the same time, also have this kind of, even though I wasn't there, but an almost survivor's guilt that all those people had to suffer so much for all of us to be here. So a lot of feelings, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of days that I don't know how I got out of bed, but we have to get on with it, don't we? That's what Jewish people do.
Of course. And we've seen the other side of things as well. You and I both had kids serving in the army. We've seen the incredible bravery of our soldiers, and also a rallying around that's happened in Israeli society. A
rallying around, we were very divided on October 6th. And then after October 7th, people just realized we actually have real enemies. So maybe let's stop thinking that we are each other's enemies. We're not. And I really think, and I'm hoping we don't fall back. I fear we're falling back into those old divisions. And as Rabbi Jonathan Sachs always said, the only people that can destroy the Jewish people are the Jewish people. And so for me, it's a rallying cry that whatever's happening, we can be a very dysfunctional family, the Jewish people, but let's not forget that we're still family.
Absolutely. You've gone from TV studio to TV studio, network to networks, giving interviews in English and Spanish. What's been the reaction? What's that been like for you? What surprised you?
Well, I'd been doing media before October 7th, representing Jerusalem. And every time there was a sort of a skirmish or a conflict, it happened to be in Jerusalem. So we had everything that happened with Sheikh Jarrah and all of that mess. And then Temple Mount. Every year in Ramadan, there was always a conflagration up on Temple Mount. And I was always the person speaking in the media. But it was never, ever the intensity of after October 7th. When we all became our own little startups of trying to advocate for the state of Israel. Stand With Us has been doing it so effectively for the last 20-odd years. And we all had to do our best. This was my reserve duty. There were days, Michael, when I was doing 10 interviews a day. There were days that I was waking up at 2 a.m. to do American news at 3 and 4 and 5 a.m. because I thought to myself, if there are soldiers in the front line sacrificing their lives, the least I can do is be there available at any hour of the day to fight the media war. And let's not kid ourselves. There is a media war that we're fighting. And like a friend of mine, Eric Weinstein, who goes on Joe Rogan all the time, as he says, we're in a hybrid war. This is not just a war in the fronts, we're in a hybrid war. The delegitimization, what StandWithUs has been dealing with for the last 20 years, is real. And it's affecting us in so many ways. And we are the soldiers in that war. And so we can't rest for a second.
And let's not be, let's be clear. We do have allies as well, of course.
We have incredible allies.
And some of those have stepped forward since October the 7th. So let's talk a bit about that.
Well, we have incredible allies. First of all, we've got the evangelical community in America and around the world who've been completely morally clear about what's going on here, morally clear about who's evil, these Islamist fundamentalists. And they have been there, they have lobbied for us, they have advocated. Many of them have taken a hit reputationally, whether it's artists or whether it's, preachers, whatever it is. They've been there for the Jewish people and they've taken a hit as a result. And then you've got our Arab Zionist friends like Rowan and Loi and the other Loi. We're such blessed, again, with moderate Muslims who are very clear about who the bad guy is, who know that is their enemy too, the enemy of moderation, the enemy of normalization. And they've been very clear for us. And again, these are brave people, because to stand up for Israel these days is to really understand that you're going to take a hit and that you're prepared to take that hit. They're going to come for you. That they come for you and me, we're used to that, we know it, but that you are not from the Jewish tribe and you're still willing to take the hit. To me, that deserves all the credit in the world, all the credit in the world.
And so let's talk a bit about Jerusalem. You're the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, of course.
I was.
Things you were, yes, I know. One of the things that struck me in this war is that actually there hasn't been a conflagration in Jerusalem. We saw previous conflicts, May 21, for instance. Yes. We did see, hostility in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And not just Jerusalem, but in other parts of the country, Arab-Israeli cities, mixed cities, there hasn't been a conflagration since October the 7th. What'd you put that down to?
That's a really interesting question, and I've been talking and thinking about that. Yahya Sinwar, in his dreams, believed that October 7th would inspire the Arabs of Israel and the Arabs of Jerusalem to rise against the Jews. And instead, what happened was almost the opposite effect. They went, not in my name, no. What, beheading babies? That's not our bag. We may not love these people, but we're not going to behead their babies. And so I think it had the opposite effect. So in Jerusalem, there was almost like a fear that anything big would happen. Of course, we bolstered security. At the time, I was still deputy mayor. We bolstered security. And then something very interesting happened in Jerusalem. Jerusalem became the city of refuge for northern evacuees and southern evacuees. We at one point had about 50,000 evacuees in the city, and we created a whole headquarters for help. People came in the summer with no coat, and they were here for months. So we had to give them clothes. Jerusalem is chilly. And so we had all of that going on. But at the same time, a lot of Arabs called me up from Jerusalem, almost crying and saying, that's not us. And I'm like, you don't have to tell me. I know. So there was something different that happened. I'm not saying that there aren't radical elements. And also because I think of the bolstering of security, because Hamas was busy in this war, their textbook conflagration on Temple Mount for the last 2 years on Ramadan haven't happened. It's ironic because their playbook every single year has been this. We send these hooligans/terrorists on a Thursday night. They lock themselves into the mosque. They desecrate the mosque. They're playing football. They're throwing stones. It's disgusting. The next day, Israel understands there's 90,000 Muslim worshippers coming to Temple Mount. They've got to get rid of these bad apples, these hooligans, these thugs, these terrorists. And so the police go up there, and then the announcement goes out to the Muslim world. The Israeli police are storming Temple Mount. It is textbook. Every single year it happens. And every single year when the BBC called me to interview about that as deputy mayor, I would be, look at my interview the year before. This is textbook. It's curated. You do understand this is an excuse for them to start throwing rockets from Gaza. But in the last 2 years, ironically, because we're in a war, a proper war with them, nothing's happened on Temple Mount. It's been 100,000 people, and somehow the playbook hasn't worked because they're either busy or we're on it a bit more. I don't know.
Okay, it's good to know. Something else that's held up in this time is the Abraham Accords. And so what does that tell you about both the Accords and the future of the Accords?
I see it a little differently. The Abraham Accords have proven themselves. Why do I say that? Because October 7th happened and it was horrible. A lot of people expected them to fall apart and the Emiratis announced they're out of it. It didn't happen.
And that's what Hamas wanted.
That's what, I mean, they just admitted it, that the reason that they did October 7th when they did was to stop, halt and eliminate the Saudi normalization. I've been saying this for a year and a half and people have been like squinting or laughing, but this is exactly why it happened. We know that. Now, what happened with the Abraham Accords? A month after October 7th, the Arab League met, 22 Arab countries, and they met to pass 3 boycotts on Israel. And the boycotts didn't pass. Why? Because the Abraham Accords countries vetoed the boycotts. So, number one, they proved themselves. Number two, we were attacked last April by Iran, the first direct attack by Iran, 300 missiles through the night. We're all in shelters. Yeah. And the next day, it was discovered that the Emiratis helped us, and the Saudis helped us, and the Jordanians helped us with planes in the sky. And so you say to yourself, what's really amazing is not that they helped us, but that they admitted that they helped us. Because in the Arab world, sometimes reality and rhetoric can be two different things. To me, that's a sign that they're robust and they're successful. I don't expect to see protests with Israeli flags on the street. I expect to see quiet, strategic help because they know that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is Hamas, is their enemy too.
And would you expect to see other countries joining the Abraham Accords?
Absolutely. We hopefully will have Saudi Arabia. Let's see what happens with Syria. I mean, the biggest surprise of all of this is, well, Trump actually asked Syria to join the Abraham Accords. So let's see what happens with us. And I think that if Saudi join, we're going to have other countries like Oman and Indonesia also joining. And that's the hope.
What's your message to Western activists, to these encampment protesters that we've seen, and people who might be inclined to join them, given the reality of the situation on the ground?
Well, I know that some people mean well. I know there's a lot of very bad actors too. And there's a lot of foreign funding coming from Qatar and Iran. And they, the Jews is the first stop. They want Western civilization to deconstruct so that Islamism can take over. That's what they want. And these kids and these protesters have been duped. Some of them are bad actors and some of them have been duped. And all I want to say to them is, just think, is what you are doing taking us closer to peace or taking us further away from peace? When all you do is serve a terrorist genocidal group that would hang those very people that are protesting for them, if all that serves is strengthen them, then you're not helping us, taking us closer to peace. And if you don't really care, then maybe, just maybe, you're an anti-Semite.
I want to close and give you an opportunity to speak directly to the activists who stand with us, people watching right now. So if you don't mind, I can invite you to turn to the camera and just give them a message of what you would, have them think, given the situation we're in right now.
We're in a difficult situation, but the Jewish people have been in difficult situations before. And I just want you to remember always that we are currently in two wider contexts. The first context that we're in is a civilizational struggle between the free world, between the countries of peace and prosperity, and a very dark Islamic fundamentalist, Nazi-like regime that wants to take over the world. So we, the Jewish people, the state of Israel, find ourselves in the middle of that conflict, in fact, in the front lines of that conflict, but there is a wider conflict going on. And the second thing to bear in mind, the context to bear in mind, is anti-Semitism, which has been around for 2,500 years, and it always changes. And today, like 500 years ago, when my family were kicked out of Spain for religious reasons, and 100 years ago, your family were persecuted from Germany, Poland, and all those countries for racial reasons. Today, we are being persecuted for having a country and having a homeland, and that is the current persecution of today. Make no mistake about it, it's the same ugly anti-Semitism, and the only thing we can do is be proud of who we are, know who we are, and stand tall. That's the only thing that works.
Fleur, thank you for being such an outspoken, articulate advocate for the state of Israel and such a great friend of Stand With Us. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Well, in these times when too many are trying to divide communities, our next guest is bringing people together. He's a unifier, an educator, a musician, and a father, and he's executive director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I'm pleased to welcome Joshua Washington. Joshua, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Michael.
And tell us what inspired you to start your journey in Black-Jewish relations and support for Israel.
Well, it was actually my father, Dumisani Washington. He founded the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel in 2013. I was fresh out of college, and for maybe those 2 years, I was just reading things, but watching him and then being able to research with him and find out things, I realized that it wasn't just something that was interesting, but it was something that I also had a stake in, that there were a lot of civil rights leaders who stood with Israel very proudly in the 70s, 60s and 70s. And that was one thing that my father had found was a newspaper clipping in the basement of a library about an organization called Black Americans Supporting Israel Committee, which was founded by Bayard Rustin. And it had so many people on there like Rosa Parks and Arthur Ashe and Martin Luther King Sr. and Coretta Scott King. And so for me, I said, well, I didn't realize that we had this kind of legacy, you know, beyond just Dr. King and his warm words to Israel. There was actually this whole community that coalesced around Jews in America and standing with Israel and standing against the terrors that come against Israel and Africa. So it was something that really, it piqued my interest, and then I just kind of went down this rabbit hole, you know, and now I'm, you know, working with my dad and speaking and writing and advocating and all those things as well.
And what are the most common misconceptions about, you know, African American support, Black support for Israel?
One of the biggest ones when it comes to Black American support for Israel is that somehow we're doing this at the behest of the Israeli government, or you know, we're on someone's payroll, right, to do this, and people can't really fathom that there are Black Americans who have their own minds, who do their own research, and have come to their own conclusions about what's going on in the Middle East, and who the real perpetrators are, and Israel's role in actually countering those things. You know, so they struggle with that. So a lot of times they'll come at us in that way. And you know, but over the years, we've garnered a lot of support from the Black community who didn't really know much and were inspired by this group of Black people who obviously were not doing this for the popularity, you know, and that actually drew people to us, which is how we've been able to grow over the years.
What's the strength and importance of that? You know, the buzzword nowadays is allyship, partnership, friendship between the two communities.
Right. The strength, I think it's rooted in friendship, a genuine relationship. You know, even more so, I would say Stand With Us, but also just you, Michael, and our friends that Stand With Us, Roz, and they've been such friends to our family. And you guys have been so open and welcoming to us that it's a genuine partnership. I think that's a natural outgrowth, you know, when you can actually start with even outside of all this, we check in with each other. When I'm here, we'll meet up. When you're in the States, we'll meet up. And that's something I think that gives a natural kind of allyship, to where when it's time to work together, that's like the easy part. The easy part is, okay, let's put together something beautiful and let's make something happen. You know, all that stuff becomes easy, I think.
And I mentioned, you know, at the beginning, we hear the vocal voices. The vocal voices are often the kind of shrill voices, the divisive voices. Right. So, you know, what should we be listening to? What should we be tuning our ear to?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, IPSI, first of all, you know, and but I think there are a lot of people, both that we partner with and also just that we've been observing over the years, that give it's not always as sexy, right? The account they give, sometimes it doesn't hit as hard as the being divisive. Being divisive is kind of easy. You say a couple of buzzwords, but there are a lot of people who, in the name of, you know, Bayard Rustin and Leontine Price and those characters, they have close relationships with the Jewish communities in the areas. We have partners in Chicago, pastors who work very closely with Stand With Us in Chicago and with us, and they don't just come together for the sake of coming together, but they're actually bettering the community. You know, in Chicago, they're actually bettering the areas that are most dangerous, and you know, there's a partnership there. There's a genuine wanting to move the needle forward, and so
it's easier to talk, it's harder to do.
Exactly. So like Pastor Corey Brooks in Chicago is one of our closest partners. He's about the work, you know, and so when he partners with people in Chicago, like Peggy Shapiro and They really do something powerful, and I think those are the people that we want to listen to. Those are the people who, like I said, it's easier to talk about. It's easier to say, oh, no, but they actually get their hands dirty and they put their hands to the plow. Those people, I think, they need to be elevated as much as possible.
And you're also unifying people through music. Tell us a bit about your music and how your faith, how Israel penetrates into the story that you're telling through your music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music is my first love. And so when I started really learning about Israel, I just kind of started to weave into my music. And, growing up playing in church, growing up in an environment where I was always playing all the time, even if I didn't know what I was supposed to be playing, just kind of figuring things out and developing that skill. And then with all the things that I've been learning that really just touched my heart and grew inside of me, I think now I'm at a place where I can really write the things that I'm feeling and articulate in a really good way and communicate to people who don't know. The first show on my tour is here in Jerusalem, but after that, it's we're in London and then all across the U.S. and they really get to get a piece of, I think anyway, a piece of Israel, a piece of like this history through music that they probably would never get because they probably would never go to a political event or something that we would put on through IPSI. So it's a door, and I think I'm grateful to be able to be that door for people to at least get a peek into something that they probably would have never looked at.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't speak about your late wife, who we much loved, Olga Mishre Washington, originally from South Africa.
Yeah.
Lived with you, and of course your beautiful two kids.
Thank you.
In America. Tell us what the legacy of her work is.
It is. So Olga's legacy is vast and very deep. And again, I want to say thank you because you guys were like the first people to step in when she was just in the hospital. We didn't even know what was going to happen. And, Stand With Us came in and supported us. You guys set up a GoFundMe for us and just for her recovery. And then things kind of went south quickly. And you guys were right there. So I appreciate you for that. Thank you. And yeah, her legacy is one of really it's, standing on the shoulders of Queen Makeda, when she came to visit King Solomon 3,000 years ago. And she embodied that. Olga really embodied that Africa-Israel relationship, that highway to Zion, and the fact that we were able to have our ceremony here, that she was buried in Haifa, like that speaks volumes, I think, for the kind of person that she was. And so this tour even is in her honor. There's songs that were written for her before she passed that she never got to hear, and then since she passed, and her legacy, it lives on in us and her children especially. We're working on something now so that when they're older, they can actually see who their mom was in all these different facets, because it's important, for them to know the shoes that they have to fill as they get older.
And she was incredible. Such admiration for her, for your family, for her family. It's really both beautiful families. And our funeral was such a tribute and such an honor rightly bestowed upon her by the state of Israel. People want to learn more about your work and also about your music. Where should they go?
For our work, you can go to ibsi.org. You'll see everything. We have a Substack that we update all the time with podcasts, videos, all those things, and events. And for me, you can go to jodavimusic.com. Again, I'm on...
Jodavi, that's Jodavi.
Jodavi, yes, sir. Jodavimusic.com. I'm on a tour right now. Love to see whoever's around and make some beautiful music together.
Incredible. Well, I'm privileged to be attending the tour. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.
Much admiration to you.
Thank you.
Great news. You can now listen to Special Briefing as a podcast. Listen to the latest show or catch up with previous interviews with guests such as Naftali Bennett, Natasha Hausdorff, Yosef Haddad, Deborah Messing, Douglas Murray, and many more. Search for Stand With Us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or watch the shows on the Stand With Us YouTube channel. And of course, to do the work that we do, we rely entirely on donations from wonderfully supportive individuals like you. So if you'd like to be our partner today, go to standwithus.com/donate. Thank you very much. That's our special briefing for today. Our love to all our supporters from all around the world. Thank you so much for standing with us. Yisrael Chai.